Really, is it just politics that's holding back?
Sure, it's amazing. You know, we deal, I tell you how bad it got, and I mentioned it on the House floor. Tom DeLay was President Clinton's, my president, who I support, as you know, President Clinton's chief lobbyist in the House floor, on the House floor, for trading with China. And a week later, he was denouncing Fidel Castro and the communist government of Cuba in order not to sell them food and medicine. Now, it's bad. It's a hypocritical. It's bad politics. So we deal with China. We deal with Vietnam. We deal with Korea, and we should. But we don't deal with Cuba because we have a quarter or a third of a state in this union that has been controlling our foreign policy towards Cuba, and almost did on the Elian Gonzalez issue, because that boy should have gone home immediately.
Shifting to another area of Latin America, Colombia. We've talked about this before, and also I've been very much interested in it, having been formerly chairman of the Narcotics Committee.
Right.
The question of narcotics in Colombia is a very closely allied issue. How do you feel about the recent program that we have giving large amounts of aid to Colombia now?
Okay. I'm very nervous about it, and I voted no the first time that it came around. Well, when it came around, I voted no. And here's my reason. Of course, we all are in favor of any aid, any expenditure of American dollars that will keep drugs from being produced and shipped out of Colombia to reach our neighborhood or any neighborhood in the world. But in Colombia, there's another issue going on. There is a civil war going on between insurgents who start out 50 years ago saying this society is unfair to the poor, and a government which at times has allied itself, not necessarily this government, but governments allied themselves with right-wing death squads and so on, who said that those people were just simple communists and should be destroyed. Anytime you have a situation like that, you really don't know who's right and who's wrong. What you should do then is not take sides. And I think that what's happening is that our government is saying, we're going to help the government get rid of drug dealers. And I think that's going to be an excuse for the government to say, well, you know, the drug dealers are all really the guerrilla people that are fighting us. So with the helicopters we gave them, they'll start attacking guerrilla outposts, and we will be told that we're fighting drug barons, if you will, or drug-producing people, when in fact we're attacking the guerrilla and getting involved in a civil war. And I'm not too young or too old to remember Vietnam, where we got involved in something that didn't end properly and just has caused us so much headache.
Haven't the drug dealers been involved in the political elements?
Well, absolutely. The problem is that in Colombia, most people will tell you they've been involved on both sides. In other words, people who know this issue claim that both the insurgents and the government have benefited from the drug trade. And so you can't then say that only one side is involved. And again, if you're going to use, if the government's going to use this help to go after people who are producing drugs and growing coca leaves and so on, okay, that's one issue, and we all support that. But if they're going to say, oh, and we think that that guy over there who is trying to lead a revolution in that part of the country is in cahoots with them, and you go attack them, then what we did, in fact, was help the government fight its civil war, and we shouldn't be doing that.
One of the things that we found some years ago was the fact that when we gave helicopters to various countries, they were doing just exactly what you said, using it in other manners other than what they were intended for. In fact, we couldn't even find the logs of the helicopters. They were used to transport some of the dignitaries of the country. They were used on various occasions for other than drug fighting. And that's one of the big problems.
Right, and there are people who are concerned also that we may be doing this without telling the American people to keep an eye on some situations in Venezuela, which is another topic for another show of 3 hours length. But in Venezuela you have a situation where a gentleman by the name of Hugo Chavez, who tries to overthrow the government and goes to jail for it as a military person, then comes back, joins the political ranks, and gets elected. He gets elected a second time with mass support from the very poor and opposition from the very wealthy. Well, at the expense of sounding simplistic, any person or any situation or any organization that has the support of the poor and doesn't have any support from the very wealthy in Latin America, you should pay attention to what he's doing, because he's got to be doing something right. But we are concerned that he may turn out to be another leftist-leaning socialist, and rather than working with him, people in Washington are getting nervous. And some people in some of those Latin countries are saying the only reason the United States took this opportunity to go to Colombia is to set up a base to keep an eye on Chavez. Well, that's the last thing we need right now, that kind of confrontation.
One of the problems of administrations that have gone on before this one and the present administration about paying attention to our Latin American neighbors.
Right.
They're treated almost as poor relatives.
Not only that, as you know, Lester, one of the problems that we've had throughout this time also is that we've asked a simple and simplistic question, which is unfair, and we're still asking it. Do you think Castro's a good guy? Do you like socialism? If the answer is yes to both, you're in trouble with us. If the answer is, no, I hate those communists and I hate those socialists and I'm for capitalism, then if you go abuse the people, we don't pay much attention to you. We say, well, he's with us. Well, that's the resentment in Latin America, that so many democracies were in fact not democracies.
Well, our whole policy, I mean, ever since the time of Rockefeller, which I remember, you may not.
I remember Nelson.
Nelson, that's what I'm talking about. The fact that he directed attention. He called it the good neighbor policy.
Yes.
But we don't have anything like that.
No,
today.
we don't. We don't. And you know, Rockefeller was a very interesting fellow in the fact that he spoke Spanish, you know, and he was very well known in Latin America. And that's what you have to do. I don't think we've ever paid attention to the fact that our world, our future, may in fact be south of the Texas border as much as anywhere else.
I want to thank you very much, Joe, for coming by here. I know that this is a very busy time for you guys, trying to tidy things up before you leave.
Well, it's always a pleasure. We're trying to get out of here before the World Series starts in the Bronx, actually.
Again, my thanks to you, and I hope you'll come back again in the near future.
Certainly will.
Now, until next week at the same time, this is Lester Wolff saying so long from Washington.